Hi. Today I thought I'd talk about the concept of fine-grained authorization, which is something that I talk about a lot, but it's a bit hard to explain. And to do that, first I'm going to back up a stage and say there's this concept of authentication, authorization, and access, or AAA. Been around for a long time. Authentication, that's the who problem. Who are you? You log in with something, some credentials against some system which asserts you are who you say you are. And a lot of people confuse that with, well, now that I've logged in, I automatically have permission to my stuff, right? Well, that problem is called authorization. What are you allowed to do? And it's actually distinct. In consumer systems, you log into Netflix and there isn't really a concept of authorization, except maybe there is. Maybe you can't set the parental controls, or you can, etc. So authorization is what you're allowed to do, and it should be more fine-grained than everything or nothing. You're not necessarily an administrator of all systems. Some systems you only have a subset of stuff. You can only see your own pay stubs. You can't see your neighbor's pay stubs, etc. And that's what we mean by authorization, is what are you authorized to do? And then access is how do you get to the thing. If it's on the public internet, it's direct. If it's inside your company, you will use a zero trust solution like Agillicus in order to get there. But what does fine-grained authorization do? Well, in my customer's space, we often see a really great package called Ignition. And Ignition has this tool in it called Perspectives. And Perspectives, it's basically a type of HMI. It's some dashboard to some industrial stuff. And it's not uncommon for a single server to have more than one Perspectives installed on it. It might have water and wastewater, two different sides of the same organization. It might be somebody runs it on behalf of their own customers, and in that regard, it's multi-tenant, and you've got customer one and customer two. And on the same Ignition server, those will be paths in the URL. So at the top of the URL bar, you'd see, my perspective to mydomain.com/project1, my domain 2, etc. And when you're doing something like, a simple port forward or a VPN, it's all or nothing. And you got to kind of hope people stick to the only Ignition that they're allowed to when you have something like this. You don't tell them about that other path. Maybe they won't find it. Maybe there's no vulnerabilities in it, etc. But when you have a system like Agillicus NEX and our fine-grained authorization, you can say Dawn is allowed access to, Perspective, but only subtree 1, not subtree 2. And that way, even if I try to adjust the URL bar, I just can't even get to it. I can't become aware of it. It's just not there. It's just magic. And that's really what we want to see, is authorization done on a per resource basis, where resource is more fine-grained than just a single IP address or server. And the partner in crime of fine-grained authorization is fine-grained audit. And here you want to be able to say who logged in to what. Dawn used Perspective Dashboard 2, which is distinct of Dawn used Perspective Dashboard 1. You want that there. You also want to know what level of access. Did I do a change to it? Did I just read it, etc.? Because, somebody's going to ask that question later. Oh no, we had ransomware. How did it get in? Oh no, who stole the information, etc. And that's really what you need. You need authentication, who the person is, distinctive authorization, what they're allowed to do. And the authorization needs to be fine-grained. It's less than everything. It's less than, well, you can authenticate, therefore you have everything. And it's to individual systems, individual roles on those systems, and it has to have an audit trail associated with it. Anyway, if you want to learn more, just check out our website, www.agillicus.com, or email us, info@agillicus.com. Thank you, and bye-bye.